Hello and welcome to the webinar titled Customer Communications for the Millennials, Going from Paperless to Digital and Beyond. Presented jointly by Newgen Software, a global software lead vendor in the space of BPM, ECM, CCM in case management, and Forrester Research Inc. I thank you all for overwhelming response that we have for this webinar. I am Darshak Parmar and shall be your host and the moderator for this webinar today. Today we have with us Craig Clair from Forrester Research. Craig is a Vice President and a Principal Analyst serving enterprise architecture professionals in Forrester Research Inc. From Newgen, we have Varun Goswami as a presenter who heads the Newgen Center of Excellence for Customer Communication Management, Payments, Mobility, and Digital Sensing. At the end of the presentation, we will be having a question and answer round. We request you to type your questions in the questions window of your GoToWebinar anytime, and I shall take them up at the end of the session with our experts. With that, I am going to hand over to Craig. Craig, we can't hear your voice.
I'm sorry. This is Craig Clair again. I was on mute, so let me do a take two here. So this is customer communications for millennials, moving from paper to digital, and this is an area that I've been focused on for a number of years here at Forrester and prior to Forrester as well. We're going to take a look at the main patterns that are changing with regard to how millennials, but really all humans really want to receive information, how they want to be communicated with. And then based on that, we'll take a look at those patterns. Then we'll take a look at some practices that are synthesized from the hundreds of discussions we have with companies that are tackling these issues, and just provide some closing thoughts. Probably the biggest conversation in the industry around process in general is really trying to move to a digital business, digital transformation, digital disruption. These are the semantics you hear today. And what this boils down to in terms of actions that companies are taking is we have to change the way we look at a process. We have to move from the old inside out, where we had experiences really designed from a department level that didn't represent the entire customer experience, but only a piece of it. So you ended up with a relatively disjointed experience for the customer, because they were viewing the claims department or the sales department or the service department. They were viewing the processes that have emanated from inside those departments, and they never really focused on that aggregate view that a customer has, who doesn't care about departments or organization, only cares about the collective experience across all of those areas. So there's been a focus on this type of process change for years. The methodology is called target operating models or capability mapping. They really all were trying to get to a customer view that was end-to-end. But recently, it's been customer journey mapping, and the goal is to create new outside-in experiences. So you're concerned about the the feelings of the customer, the desires of the customer, the outcomes that the customers received. So when you think about that, the top methodology for trying to understand that outside-in perspective is customer journey mapping. And here, if you've ever been in one of these design sessions, they're quite exhausting. you spend hours and hours in a room, meeting room with lots of different stakeholders, and you're pinpointing all of the interactions that a customer has in their journey and interaction with your company. And if it's an airline, you start with the alarm going off, and then taking a shower, and then getting the taxi to the airport, and you understand the sentiment, the feelings that the customers experience at each of those points, and you have a template for reviewing that. What was the customer thinking? What were they feeling? What were they doing? So you follow that all the way through until the point where they're dragged off the airplane, unfortunately. But that's sort of the fashionable methodology for designing outside-in experiences is using customer journey mapping, and communications, of course, is a big part of that. And everything is moving to a number of key technologies that are really transforming communications. Certainly, mobile since 2009. 2010, since the iPhone has really been a focus for getting basically all communications in a mobile environment that you can get in the traditional environments, but also these other technologies, sensors. Just about everything is becoming IP addressable, able to emit signals that can give context and location and other aspects that can be used to communicate more effectively. Certainly AI and machine learning are very much in the conversation today, and that is providing the analytics to understand what should we be communicating, what is based on what the customer's thinking and feeling and the outcome that you want, what would past experience tell us, and those systems now are getting better at learning about you. That's where the learning comes in. They're building a knowledge base about you that can more effectively figure out that next communication. So there are lots of new digital technology that it's emerging that are affecting this whole area. Now, this is a big one, and this is what companies are trying to do. They're trying to, in transforming to a digital business, they're trying to, break up that sort of linear and serial process structure that you had with most companies that you see in the upper left. And today's modern company is using tools like enterprise collaboration, team messaging, real-time communication, real-time video along with team messaging, new forms of breaking down those structured silos that tended to control the flow of information. And now, it's becoming much more distributed. Organizations are flattening out. They're starting to bleed these communities of interest across the firewall, so that they're now customer communities that are becoming very, very valuable, for as another channel of communication with customers. They want to be on, Facebook and Facebook Messenger, and to be able to communicate with companies. They want to, be using apps like WhatsApp to discuss issues. So there's a sort of a modern corporate environment that's much more distributed, much more decentralized, sort of a set of concentric communities that are overlapping and creating this more, it appears chaotic at some point, but what you're getting with that is much greater business agility, and communications is a big part of that. So that's sort of the big things that companies are thinking about when they think of digital transformation. To get to the customer communications management, we talk about two very connected ecosystems. The customer experience, which is, think of that as your marketing cloud, think of that as your your sales, your marketing automation, those types of technologies that are really trying to change behavior of customers, get new customers. But behind that, behind the scenes, if you will, you have kind of the back office, which is your operational excellence. These are, the systems, technologies, processes, the people, that get the product off the shelf and get it out to the customer. These are the processes that, post to the general ledger so that the business can be run efficiently. These are very important in terms of the customer experience, because if you don't do those things well, then you really don't have a good business. It doesn't matter matter how good your mobile app is, if you can't deliver on the product and services that you've been promoting, then you have a failed customer experience. So we're going to drill into the operational area and just talk about where does customer communications management fit in. It's one of 12, 13 different technologies that are all trying to move the business from analog and paper, to being digital. So you see it there with these are many of the areas that Newgen's portfolio has, but you have things like electronic forms that are trying to replace paper. You have multi-channel capture, which absorbs paper and turns it into. You have robotic process automation, which is a form of replacing a low-value human activity that may be on a desktop or a keyboard, and building a bot essentially to replicate or emulate that human activity. And what that does is just gets the analog and the human aspects. It takes what's currently kind of a robotic activity that humans are doing, and it moves that to a real robot so that the human can, in theory, do more higher value things, more customer interaction, more just generally thinking about how to improve the customer experience in a big way. So you see customer communications management here in two places. You might say, why? Why is it on the right there in the last phase, and why is it in the middle phase called the growth phase? And why is it on a different line than the other one? So basically, customer communications management, which deals today still with service communication. It deals with the communication of the customer once you have a customer. So it's not the marketing communications, although there's a big movement to try to blend those. Today it's still largely information coming out of systems of record that are being templated and produced and sent, traditionally via print, but more and more via digital channels. So interactive CCM is the higher growing area, and that companies are really focusing on that right now. They're focusing on changing that correspondence that they've had for years, those memos that they sent that they don't even know how many people read, where the language is obtuse, based on definitions that are important to a legal team, but not really trying to inform the customer. And as you know, there's been a strong compliance movement to try to be more simple in the language that companies use in communicating with customers, so they actually are informing the customer of the mortgage that they're getting, or the loan they're getting, or the product that they're getting. There's an attempt to get it into multiple languages. That's been a rule for a lot of years, or a best practice for a lot of years. So the emphasis on having the language reflect a defensive legal posture by companies, and moving it to promoting a more transparent communication is a big trend. So a lot of companies are saying, well, what do I have to do that? Well, you have to take a look at your 12 or 15 different interactive CCM solutions, and maybe you need to create sort of a governance board, create a data dictionary to look at language, to solidify your tools as more of a shared service. So there's a lot of investment in CCM there right now, less so in the structured CCM, which are more your traditional statements. So it's just a map to show how business process management, electronic signature, they're all technologies that help you get rid of paper in organizations, which is a very, very critical given the transition that we're seeing. So here are some trends for CCM that are very, very important. Millennials and really all customers really want shorter and more real-time communication. We just don't have the time to read long, complex communications. What's happened over the years is because there's a good response rate for things like statements, that are routine monthly statements, we've tended to put more and more information in them. So they've gotten more complex and longer. At the same time, the appetite for long and complex has gotten less. People are more impatient now. They have a higher expectation for, not wasting their time. So they don't have much time sitting at home looking at this information. So they want it real time and they want it short. And again, they want an English language. So that's a really important pattern for, affecting CCM. Control has moved to customers. So today, the company has the control. They're going to send you what they want to send you when they want to send it to you, and in the format they want to send it to you in. And more, as we shifted to this age of the customer, where the power of information has shifted to what's in your pocket, being able to get access to hundreds and hundreds of referrals and web capability, having the tremendous online library of information at your fingertips. The power has shifted to the customers. The customer now wants to control what communications they get, what it looks like, and so that's a very, very big trend, because that's not the way CCM has evolved over the years. I mentioned this blending of service and marketing communications. So if you look at the customer journey and you look at the communications around that, there have been this very siloed effect of communications being just focused and run by the department that's responsible for service. The marketing communications run by a totally different group, different building, and they really are dealing with their metrics and their objectives, which are lead generation, and not caring about essentially the quality of the customer experience post-customer. So marketing CMOs are getting more focused on communications, and they're trying to blend those two so that there's a consistent brand, and they can have some transactional elements on that marketing communications as well. That's a big one. Diminished role for traditional CCM documents. So a lot of companies I talk to don't have any idea what their customers are enjoying. What of the content they produce is actually having value to the customer. How much are we sending because we have a regulatory requirement to send it? They don't have the analytics to understand that. But in general, the traditional documents that we've been sending are becoming less valuable as, for example, millennials and others move to self-service portals, and they want to see the financial statement. They're looking at their account in real time and minute by minute how it changes. Do they really need the monthly statement? Doesn't have the power that it had years ago. And this mid-journey conversation, my last point here, and I have a slide that I'll talk about that, but that's where you're not at the very front end, you're not a prospect, and you're not a customer, or maybe you're a customer that doesn't fall within a particular process there. But you want to have a more casual conversation. This is where collaboration technologies come in that bleed across the firewall. Now, these are sort of a summary of those trends I talked about. Today's communication is driven by the system of record. It's the data comes out of that. It's driven by those requirements. Tomorrow, it's going to be more customer experience management driven, the customer journey, outside-in approach. Today, it's customer statements and letters. It's going to be more interactive. More customer-controlled communication. Today we have very rigid fixed formats that don't show up well on mobile. So a lot of the traditional service communications it's PDF. PDF doesn't work on mobile very well. So we need to get HTML5 statements. We need to get HTML5 letters. We need to bury links in there and show have a more interactive and responsive formats for that. That's the move to mobile that we'll hear about from Newgen in a bit. One-way communication to interactive engagement, talked about that. Missing context. Context is really, really critical for communications. I don't think the context is going to be driven by the CCM tools or the marketing automation tools. I think the context is going to come from deep analytic engines that tend to be associated with cloud environments. Mega cloud environments. We'll talk about that in a minute. And this is it really paints the picture of the kind of confusion that companies are experiencing today, and really trying to understand, where should I drive my communications from? What part of all of these platforms? I have social communications that's bleeding across the firewall, like Facebook Messenger. I have all my marketing automation, email, campaign management. I have web content management systems. I have my customer communications management area. I have self-service portals. So if I'm a banking customer and I have a online banking app, I can generate statements within that. I don't have to use my CCM tools for that. And then I have, collaboration environments like Slack. Slack is moving across the enterprise into teams that extend to customers with the enterprise grid. And then you have cloud-based communications like Twilio, the set of APIs for doing video and text. That's used by Uber. It's used by Airbnb. It's a sort of it's a set of APIs for communications essentially. So where is the driving force for understanding that context of the customers and orchestrating the communications? Where is that going to come from? And these of course center around different parts of the customer journey. So you see the front end of the journey. On the left side of the circle tends to be social communications, email marketing automation, back end more customer communications management, and the mid journey up in the air. So it's confusing for customers to figure out how to do this and coordinate all these diverse platforms. Now, another thing that's going on is this world of robotics, and you hear every day about artificial intelligence. You hear about robotic process automation, and basically these are software routines or bots that allow you to automate things that maybe a human was doing. Now, how does this fit into customer communications management? Well, there's an aspect of the CCM systems where the worker, the employee, maybe in the mid-office, maybe in the customer service environment, is interacting with the document system to really prepare the document for communicating. This means they may have a pre-scripted set of questions they're answering, yes, no, true, false. It may mean that they have a block that they're entering text in. It may mean that they're cutting and pasting from one application a total of some kind or a summary and putting it into a block in the template. So there are a lot of, we call that the interactive layer for CCM. And that's, you may have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that are doing, these types of grabbing data, creating the email, cutting information and pasting. So robots, meaning software macros that are associated with that desktop, can do a lot of that work basically. So we're seeing that with this drive to move to more on-demand communications, faster communications, more real-time communications, that having bots prepare communications for customers is an inevitable trend. Also on the left, what you see are customers coming in more via chatbots and voice and NLP. Well, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to expect to get responses to the information they're requesting right away. And that's where the bots can come in and do that. So this is sort of the next generation customer, personalized communication driven by new forms of self-service that we're going to see. And CCM has a role in that. So here's some best practices. I mentioned interactive and structured. These are the different formats or different types of communications. You see different use cases within that. Again, the growth and the focus of companies seems to be more on the interactive side, particularly in business correspondence, negotiated documents, welcome kits, product catalogs, those types of things are a little closer to the customer experience. The structured area for those batch, financial statements and telephone bills and so forth, those are very important systems. Those are tier one systems. If they don't work well, people lose their jobs. If there are errors, it's very, very bad. But they tend to be, once they're built and set up and run, they're going into into the system of record and pulling a vast number of fields and mapping them to a very complex but a very small number of templates on the structured side. Interactive side, just the opposite. You've got thousands of templates, hundreds of templates, and a very light layer of personalization, some of which is done by the human via the interactive capability we talked about. So they're very different kind of areas. The big investment is in interactive. Structured, the big interest right now is moving away from PDF as a way to view on mobile and building the ability to convert to HTML5 or to do a mass conversion up front so that you have a mobile statement. And then, of course, you can improve the customer experience. And as I said, robotic process automation is helping to move all of this to more of an on-demand communications, which happens today. I mean, today you have a change in a core system. There might be an automatically generated response. And there's a lot of that, and of course that's what companies have been trying to move to for years. So this is our framework. The point here is to focus on the digitizing the interactive use cases. There's just a ton of paper still being sent out by companies. 80% of content is still sent via paper in a lot of industries. That's amazingly bad right now, given we're in 2017. The way you do this is start to think about moving to multi-channel. This basically shows that when you have a complex letter, you may have a number of data associations that are looking at blocks. So the images, conditional expressions, text fields, these are just blocks in a template. The templates are going in and associated with various core systems, external data, marketing artifacts, and they're being in the new systems, the new CCM solutions, like Newgen's going to talk about in their portfolio. These instead of having a fixed template, the template is created dynamically based on the situation and the context and the system's interaction, and it's going in and pulling up the components that you need for that particular correspondence. Now that really frees you up from having so many templates, because if they're dynamically created, then you don't need to have you don't need to have versions of thousands of templates in various stores and worry about all that version control and change management and everything. And in fact, every time somebody wants to send something and they can't find the template right away, which has been a problem in a lot of systems, they create a new one. And so you get this proliferation of templates. So this is a movement to dynamic templates. And look at the post-processing, e-delivery, rights management, digital signature, interactive experience. This used to be just about how to get a batch of letters into the print channel. And now you have, in the modern systems, you have all of these facilities to really help you move to digital. So that's best practice number 2. 3 is to take your high volume documents and figure out which ones they are and focus on digitizing them. It's always the 80-20 rule. It seems like in many areas, 80% of your volume is with 10 or 15% of your documents. So figure out which ones those are, and then look at the complexity. So you have security complexity, you have layout complexity, number of text boxes, all these calculated and conditional fields. So basically you can pick the highest volume documents that have the lowest level of complexity and work on, like an insurance declaration, work on digitizing those. And you'll find that you start to move a lot of volume away from paper that way. So this is a very simple, you could say very logical, not rocket science approach to it, but it's amazing the number of companies that get overwhelmed by the number of templates and number of correspondence and issues they have, and they don't do anything. So it's a very strong process to go through and try to just get going. You don't have to convert in one day. You can convert a lot of your volume by taking a simple prioritization approach. Now this is, I've made this reference a few times, revising the language is really, really critical. Transparency is really critical. This is a quote I love from a company I interviewed. Biggest problem is we speak internal jargon to customers. We have so much information that is written by lawyers today for other lawyers to read. And that is not what the intent of correspondence and communication is. It's to inform the customer and to build that customer experience and to build trust in the brand. That's what we need to focus on, and companies are starting to get it. Now, this is an area that we really need to focus on as well, which is we've just done a very bad job of consent marketing. And by consent, I mean the consent to move away from paper to digital. The adoption rate for electronic delivery is frankly pathetic in a lot of industries. It's 80% still get paper. Only 20% have opted out. And what we found in looking at it is that you have these three groups. This segmentation can be very valuable. You have the super connected. They're going to get to electronic immediately. As soon as you have it, they'll be pestering you for it. Not a problem. You have these hardcore mainstream customers. My father-in-law, hardcore, never going to move, happy with mail, wants to talk to people, likes faxing, likes contact centers, likes to talk to humans. Fine, it's not going to change. But you have this massive centerpiece, the unconvinced customer on the fence, gets electronic and paper. So starting to get there. If you can attack a consent marketing program at this middle level, forget the mainstream, forget the super connected, focus, it will really get great results. And the key driver, is not things like the environment, not things like, it's really about ease of use combined with value incentives. You provide some tangible value to going away from paper, loyalty points, discounts. These are the things that customers respond to. Don't expect them to do something that saves you money as a company and doesn't do anything for them. And a lot of consent marketing programs, that's been their approach. It has not worked well. Responsive design and mobile, I'm going to just touch on this lightly. I have already. Newgen's going to talk more about this, but basically, you can't do PDF on mobile very well. It just is not very navigable. So you've got to do something different, and HTML5 seems to be the way to go. You also have to design the communication for a mobile as well. So it's not just converted to HTML. Sometimes you have to change the incremental flow of the information to make it better, as you see here in this example. And electronic signatures. Again, it's funny, you have a very low adoption rate for paper suppression in e-delivery, but when you look at companies that launch electronic signature to their customers, the adoption rates are 50, 60, 70%, sometimes 90%. This has very, very high customer experience value. You can launch a program to have CCM create the document, because that's what's creating a lot of these documents, having them absorbed by the e-signature server. The server is putting the instructions on the signing ceremony and wrapping it into that document. It's managing the emails out to the recipients who are going to sign. It tracks their signing. It traps the electronic evidence so that you don't have a problem later on. All of these things are pretty commoditized now in the market, and you start to see here the average transactions on this graph going up to it would be 1 billion. It's probably over 1 billion right now, and these are substantive transactions. These are not getting groceries at the store and doing an e-signature on a pad. This is you're getting a loan, you're signing an NDA agreement and so forth. So think of CCM. I think the leading practice is to, when you're looking at CCM, look at e-signature as well. They're very compatible and they have a lot of synergy. Best practice on this is just to reduce the mix of outside vendors and internal systems. I've talked to companies that have 108 different solutions for customer communications management just on the CCM side, not on the marketing automation or campaign management side. So how do you move that to digital with that kind of chaos? You really can't. So what this is a framework companies have used successfully to try to group the communications into different use case areas. So you see transactional up there on the left. You see publishing and correspondence in the lower left. You see marketing, campaign management in the upper right. Think of doing an inventory of your solutions, relative to these categories, and then look at consolidating them, and when you consolidate them, then you can move forward with more specific plans. There's also a good governance structure. If you're trying to put governance in an organization on CCM, you can have governance look at language consistency, some of these higher level issues, but you can also appoint champions based on stakeholders that are based on these categories, so you can distribute the authority and the governance. Still have some central control over it, but it gives you can drive experts that are doing the transactional communications, that are doing the publishing and correspondence and so forth. So it's a good framework from both a governance and an operational efficiency standpoint. So my closing thoughts, and then I'm going to turn it over to my friends at Newgen. Here we have just CCM will complement emerging cloud digital platforms. So a lot of the analytics that will drive customer experience, that will understand the customer context, will be coming from the mega cloud vendors, whether it's Microsoft O365, whether it's Salesforce implementation, whether it's some marketing automation platform that's the Adobe's Marketing Cloud or Oracle's Marketing Cloud, IBM's Marketing Cloud. That's where the deep analytics that are going to understand and orchestrate. So think of it as the middleware that will orchestrate the customer experience for communications over time. And CCM is going to remain very important, but is really going to focus first and foremost on the operational issues for correspondence and statements. It's traditional areas. It's going to fill document generation gaps. And a lot of these marketing automation and other systems, they don't have what CCM does. They don't know what batch is. They don't have sophisticated layout tools. They kind of have the communications document generation capabilities of like a MailChimp, very, very simple email templates. So there are going to be gaps that CCM can fill. But again, CCM is not going to be the driver of the overall orchestration. It's going to continue to produce personalized documents. It's still going to handle the highly regulated documents. Those documents that CCM produces are regulated. They're systems of record kinds of documents. They need to be managed in a certain way. I think this best of breed approach is really important. So all of these communications platforms I've been talking about will, become more like microservices, more consumable, so that they can be orchestrated by this middleware that will emerge from the cloud platforms. So with that, I'll turn it over to Newgen. I think I'm just about right on time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. That was quite insightful and quite an eye-opener. Particularly for the firms that are still on the legacy systems. With that, I'm going to pass on controls to Varun, the Newgen speaker. Varun, you should have control now.
Thanks, Darshak. And thank you, Craig, for that informative presentation. This is what I am planning to cover in my presentation today. So I shall be talking about the changing landscape of communications, really just a couple of slides on how you connect with your customers, the different types of communication. And then I'll be covering a few slides on the Newgen Omni OMS CCM suite of products. And finally, I'll talk about a few success stories that we have been a part of. Now, the way we look at a CCM solution, we look at a CCM solution as being the bridge that connects the employees of an organization and the systems internally with the customers. And over the last few years, the customer behavior and the way that the customers connect to your organization has changed drastically. So while at one point of time, it was common for customers to receive print or email statements or contact your organization through phone or even walk into the branch, today customers are more comfortable connecting through email, Facebook, and Twitter. So one of the customers might want his account statements to be delivered through email, but they might want the update on their service request to be sent as both SMSs as well as mobile notifications. Another customer might connect with your organization on Twitter and expect you to respond back on the same channel. So in this kind of a scenario, the challenge for any organization is whether they have a system in place through which they can design and consistently deliver communications that are standard, follow the same branding guidelines, comply to all regulatory compliances, and of course, the most important thing, whether they support the upsell and cross-sell opportunities, whether they support the marketing messages across all of these communication channels. So accordingly, even CCM as a solution has evolved from a system that used to generate account statements and credit card bills to a system that manages the entire outbound communication, be it over email, SMS, mobile notifications, or social media. Moving on, I think Craig also covered the 3 different types of communications that, so I'll just take a couple of minutes to go through these. The first type of communication is the bulk, typically sent on regular scheduled basis and sent to customers either through emails or SMSs, typical examples being your account statements, renewal reminders. And this is what CCM solution has been all about in the past. When the whole concept of CCM started, it was more about moving away from paper and moving into a email or SMS-based communication strategy. Now, the next type of communication is what we call interactive. This is where either your front office staff or your contact center representatives would use this type of communication to generate any letters or any communication that require negotiation or some other form of editing before being sent out. Typical examples could be a policy quotation, a provider contract, etc. And the third type of communication is the one that gets triggered, generated, and sent in a single go. So examples would be, statement generation that the customers are doing for themselves, or policy letter generation as soon as the insurance purchase process is completed, and so on. Now, moving ahead, I would like to talk about some key features of the Newgen OmniOMS solution that actually allows any organization to better connect with its customers, and especially the newer generation of customers who are more interested in instant gratification, want all communications to be sent to their preferred channel of communication, and expect things to happen very, very quickly. So if you look at it, this is where it all starts from. So any CCM suite, and especially the Newgen suite of products, it requires a very strong designing capability. So we have a very user-friendly designer, and the Newgen OMS solution features a very rich content-driven communication designer. It allows you to create different types of communication. So whether it's a statement of account, an HTML-based email, or a social post, you can actually create different types of communication. And the designer allows you to connect to multiple data sources. So whether it be a JDBC-based database connection or XML or JSON-based data sets, you can directly connect to those data sets, and you can drag and drop the different data feeds onto the communication. This allows you to create very personalized, and it allows you to make modifications to the templates very, very quickly. The solution is multilingual. It supports generation of 2D or QR codes and supports for generation of secure communication. So secure communication happens in 2 ways. One is password protected PDFs or password protected Word documents. And the second is digitally signed documents. So wherever there is a legal requirement, the system allows you to digitally sign the documents using either Class 2 or Class 3 certificates and send out those documents, right? Moving ahead, now these are some of the features that we feel are very important for a CCM solution. So this is what I would like to talk about next. The most important part being, of course, social and mobile messaging. And the first and foremost, of course, is the ability to connect and send outbound communication to mobile devices and social media channels. Secondly, we were talking about marketing messages and whether the systems are capable of generating or sending, embedding marketing messages into all the communication that we are generating. And research has shown that the probability of a marketing message being looked at or even opened is much higher if it becomes a part of expected correspondence rather than a generic email or a generic marketing message, which probably either ends up in the junk folder or customers do not end up opening it at all. So having an embedded campaign manager is very important. The third is the interactive e-statement app, which actually allows an organization to generate interactive content which the customer can interact with, make certain changes, and do processing on top of that. And we are also talking about an interactive e-statement app wherein the data that is sent as part of an account statement can be transferred to a standalone app where the customer can actually play around with that data and create views which are personalized to them. Talking in slightly more detail about these topics, we are saying the embedded campaign manager allows for an organization to map their existing business rules or the segments that they create, segmentations of customers, and insert personalized and targeted marketing material within outbound communication. So we were talking about the probability of a marketing message being opened or being viewed being much higher than a generic email or an SMS-based marketing message. So this drastically increases the conversion probability or the conversion chances of this message. The next is what we were talking about in terms of interactive e-statement app. So this allows an organization to send outbound email-based communication. That communication contains a link which can subsequently launch a standalone app. And in the app, the customers can perform further drill down. And I think what Craig was also talking about is that PDF is not a very efficient mechanism of displaying information on a mobile device. So an interactive e-statement app can extract data from the email or PDF document, and it can show it in a manner which is very concise, which is very user-friendly, and customers can actually play around with that data. They can drill down, they can organize, sort the data, or look at different graphs which are generated from the data. Moving on, the self-service document is an interesting example. Now, the example that we have over here is a insurance policy quotation. So when I'm sending an insurance policy quotation, I generate an interactive document. What the user can do is they can actually make changes to the document. So they can choose whether I want zero depreciation or not, or whether they want roadside assistance or not. They can view at the final premium calculations. And then as soon as they click the submit button, it directly takes them to the portal, payment portal, where they can complete the policy, purchase process. So this kind of interactivity actually allows for a much better conversion rate as compared to static PDF or static Word documents where there is no interactivity present. Right. And talking about the interactive letter or contract generation, this is typically all the use cases where your contact center staff or your front office staff would be picking out templates. Now, in a typical organization, there could be hundreds of different templates, and many of these templates would be probably residing on the local desktops of the people who are sending them. So as and when required, they might open a Word file, fill in some data, and send it out to their customers. Contrast that with a scenario where all of these templates are categorized and created in a single communication repository. And depending upon the requirement, the front office staff can pull out the template. Most of the data comes pre-loaded from a CRM or from a core banking system. They can make changes to that data and then send it either through as an email or through a print or through any other channel directly to the customer. So interactive communication generation is one of the major cornerstones of any good CCM system. Right. Now, beyond that, just to take that example further, the Newgen CCM system I was talking about acting as a bridge between the internal systems and the communication which is finally getting generated for the customers. Now, any third-party system, could be a BPM system, could be a CRM system, whenever they need to generate a communication, they would fill in the basic data and launch the interactive Newgen Omni OMS interactive letter editor. Over here, they can view all the clauses, they can view the terms and conditions, they can even view the data fields which are present, and they can make changes. And it's a live preview. As and when they make changes, they are immediately able to see what is the end output going to look like, complete with watermarks and with complete formatting. Once they are certain of the changes, they can send it for approval or send it for further review. And once approved, the system will automatically generate and send the communication forward. Right. Now, apart from these, some of these standard features which allows an organization to better connect with its customers, Newgen has also been working on few solution accelerators. Now, these solution accelerators have come out of our engagement with our customers and our experience in the field. Now, the first solution accelerator talks about provider contracting. So it's primarily targeted towards healthcare sector, where a healthcare service provider would have to contract with multiple clinics, doctors, large hospitals, and they would have a few contract templates which get reused, but with certain changes for different doctors. So large hospital might negotiate for better terms, and those terms needs to be changed before they can be sent. And the most important part is the collaboration between the internal stakeholders, the legal, the accounts, the finance, the salesperson who initiates the contract, and the collaboration with the external third party. So if they are making any changes, the Word document automatically gets redlined, gets imported into the system, and the system shows exactly where are the changes which have been made within the contract. Right. The second solution accelerator is the wealth management accelerator, which is used by large banks to address the on-demand request by their high net worth customers. Now, these high net worth customers would be having multiple investments with the bank. So they could have invested in oil, they could have invested in real estate. And whenever their portfolio statements needs to be generated, it's a fairly complicated process. So we need to get data from the stock markets, need to get data from the commodity indexes, and generate a statement at runtime. So typically for generating of this statement, it can take anywhere between 2 to 4 days depending upon the data availability. The Newgen Wealth Management Accelerator actually allows an organization to respond in a very, very fast manner. The accelerator supports creation of reusable components and style galleries that can be quickly combined in real time to generate detailed holding reports of high net worth individual customers. Right. The third accelerator that we are talking about is actually something which is a very, very tight integration with the Newgen IBPS workflow engine. And in fact, within the workflow engine, we have a work step type, which is of CCM. And from the workflow, this allows instant generation of communication from within the workflow using the standard templates which are defined within the CCM. So different stages of the workflow, as a new application or a work item processes through the workflow, automatically communication will get generated. This could be reminder letters, this could be welcome kits, and sent out to the customers. I would like to talk about a few success stories, and the first one being the Citibank, and coincidentally I was just talking about the Wealth Management Accelerator. That is something which has been implemented in Citibank, and what it allows the bank staff is, instead of the relationship manager going to multiple people trying to get data and put everything in a single format, they can now quickly design these. They can even schedule it on certain frequencies, and something which earlier used to take 2 to 5 days for creation of a report has actually been reduced to 15 to 20 minutes with 100% SLA adherence. So that's the biggest achievement that Citibank has been able to achieve using our wealth management solution accelerator on top of Newgen Omni OMS product. Equitas is a small finance bank based out of India, and they have recently started operations, and they were looking at a CCM platform through which they can automate all their communications across their assets and liabilities operations. So they started with a few basic emails and few basic templates, and as they started using the solution, they have been able to automate and centralize entire communications. So whether it's an interactive document or an emailer, they've been able to centralize and automate all of these communications across both of these departments. Reliance General Insurance is one of the leading insurance companies based out of India. They've got 139 offices, more than 18,000 agents or intermediaries across India. And their major challenge was that whenever agents used to connect, so for the internal bank staff, they were still able to create the policy documents, but whenever agents used to connect, they had a specific requirement of being able to generate those policies instantly. And with 18 different types of policies that they issue, and each policy having multiple templates, it was becoming a challenge for them to be able to generate the policies from one location and then archive them for a longer term so that they can be accessed at any future point of time. So across their internal bank staff and across agents, they needed a standard platform which could generate all of these policy documents and archive them from a longer perspective. So the real-time performance has been really good, and as soon as you purchase a policy, within 1 to 2 seconds, the actual policy document, digitally signed policy document containing the complete terms and conditions gets returned to the customer, which acts as a legal policy proof. Finally, talking about Tokyo Marine HCC, they had a major challenge in terms of deploying a CCM system which not only generates the policy documents or the quotations, but also is able to interface with the different systems within the organization to be able to generate these documents. So one of the systems was an invoicing system, which it was very difficult to make changes to that. It was a legacy system, and it was becoming difficult to generate invoices or make changes to those invoices. Every time terms and conditions changed, it was a major effort to make that change. So all the invoices and policy documents got automated through the Newgen CCM system, and whenever any system, whether it's a BPM system within the bank or the accounting system, whenever they need to generate a communication, an on-demand or an interactive request comes to the Newgen CCM product, and the communication gets generated from there. Those were the broad topics that I wanted to cover in today's webinar, and thank you for attending this. Darshak, back to you.
Thank you, Varun. We do have a long queue of the questions that we have received via emails as well as chat. I'm gonna start putting them on the screen. The first question is that majority of the BFSIs are on a legacy system. What are the biggest challenges in migrating or integrating with the modern system, and what are the recommendations of Forrester? Craig, I think this question is for you.
Yeah, so absolutely true. A lot of the templates for communications, the rules for communications are, were built into these legacy systems. So if you're in financial services and you have 5 core banking platforms, or your insurance and you have 7 policy and admin systems, you may have templates and rules for communications in each of those systems. And the goal is to get a more of a shared services CCM platform that can move all those out of those legacy systems. So that's really is the key, is to build that abstraction and disable the communications that are in the legacy systems, move them to a more agile layer, which is the CCM solution. And then ultimately you'll start to build the kind of analytics and the next best communications and understand where the customer is relative to their channel, relative to their preferences, and those analytics will probably come from some cloud-based system that you have, or from some other analytics platform that you have, and that will interact with the solution to the various communications that you need. But you need to get those templates and those communication rules out of the legacy systems. That's the first step.
Mm-hmm. The next question is, that's quite an interesting question. There are a lot of wearable devices which are coming up, which is the next generation of mobile devices. Do a CCM technology or a system need to keep them in mind, or is it too early to think about them? Will they have any play in the future, or is it expected that the customers will demand communication on their wearable devices? I think this is again for Craig.
Well, customers are going to initiate communications from their devices, and from a social platform that they may be on and connected with the company. So that's one of the major trends, is that it's not going to be communication when the company wants to communicate. It's going to be communication when the customer wants to communicate. So it's very much mobile is a big part of that movement. So you're going to have interactions, whether you have an app for a company, whether you're interacting via your browser on your mobile device with the company's website, you're going to be able to request communications, and the onus is on the company to be able to aggregate the information and produce that in real time.
Okay. The next question, which I think is for Newgen. How will e-signature be further integrated into a CCM, and what are the major problems? What are our suggestions for that?
Okay. Now, e-signatures are like we talked about certain types of documents for which need to have a legal validity. So we are talking about contracts, we are talking about policy letters. So any such kind of a document will definitely require either an e-signature or a digital signature to be present in that. So I think having the capability to manage those signatures, having the capability to apply those signatures in any outbound communication, that's going to be one of the key areas for any CCM solution. That's what we think.
Mm-hmm. I think, Varun, the next question is again for Newgen, which is the solutions, the technology keeps focusing on the communication which is meant for external customers. What about the CCM that has to happen within the organization, or communication that is limited within the organization, the intra-organization communication? Is there a module or a feature there in the technology that Newgen has to offer?
That's actually a very interesting point, because whenever we talk about CCM, we typically tend to focus only on the outbound communication, which is going to external parties, regulatory bodies, agents, customers. We, kind of tend to forget that CCM is a solution for standardization of communication, and that communication could even be notices being sent internally, or congratulatory messages, or any such message which can be sent not only to outbound customers but also internally within the organization. And as the size of the organization grows, being able to communicate effectively with your own employees is also as important as being able to communicate effectively with external customers.
Thanks, Varun. And that brings me to the last question, which is, will it ever happen that on-demand communication and interactive communication will replace the structured communication? I think this question can be answered either by Craig or Varun from Newgen.
Yeah. So this is Craig. I think it is possible that will happen. I think it's going to be a while. There is a kind of closing of the books, events at companies that are very important for the way they're run. There are regulations around statements, for example, that must be maintained and available to customers for 7 years or 8 years. Different industries will do it differently. So there's a lot of still legacy momentum for these types of batch cycles that really drive that structured area. But when you start to look at these newer channels that are developing, whether it be the online banking channel, all channels are moving to being online and mobile, that there is much more of this pull type of reporting that's occurring. And that says it's in some way, how important is it for me to get that monthly or that quarterly statement if I can see exactly what I need to see in the moment that I want to see it? So it's really about the regulatory and structure and view that has to be altered. In other words, the millennials and the customer experience will be ahead of the way the institutions will view it relative to the regulators. I mean, we're still doing things that are based on regulations that were, passed 30, 40, 50 years ago that just haven't changed yet. So I think it's going to be a while, but I think it certainly could happen.
Thank you, Craig. I'm afraid we have reached or rather crossed our time limit for today. Thank you, Craig, and thank you, Varun, for your very, very interesting and valuable insights. And thank you the entire audience for your valuable time as well as your response. We will send across this webinar recording and transcript of all the questions to you. Goodbye and have a great day ahead.